Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first session in the Coalition of African American Leaders Virtual Job Fair Series. Today, we'll be hearing from two presenters who will be conducting job seeker workshops to help familiarize you with the skills that you will need to be successful in the virtual hiring space. If you have questions at any time, please type them into the chat and we will address them during brief Q&A sessions that will be taking place after each presentation. If you have not yet already, please be sure to register for tomorrow's employer panel and breakout room session, where you will have an opportunity to communicate directly with employer representatives on the call. A link to that registration page will be provided in the chat. Something to note, you will need to be sure to register for that second session in order to be able to participate. And real briefly here, I want to go ahead and show folks that are on the call that have not yet registered for that session how to do so. Again, I'm going to go ahead and throw this link to the page here into the chat here once I demonstrate this for you. But on this page, which you should all be familiar with, if you registered for the first session, you'll go to select a date. And as you see here, tomorrow, obviously the 27th, you'll want to go ahead and register for this session that is still showing as available here. That is going to be the session again where we will have employers on the call. And again, you'll have an opportunity to go directly into breakout rooms with them, ask the questions that you have of them, speak with them directly, and make connections with them as well. So do plan to register for that session tomorrow if you have not yet already. And with that stated, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jeff Rootier with IDES. Jeff, are you available for a few opening remarks?
I am available. So I just want to thank everyone for being available to participate today in the workshops for the Coalition of African American Leaders virtual hiring event, day one. And also, I want to thank Coalition of African American Leaders and our partners, Employer Employment Services and Department of Rehabilitation Services and Southern Illinois University for all participating in this event as well. So that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Carter.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy Tuesday, and thank you so much for attending this virtual webinar where I will be providing you with hopefully some helpful tips on how to enhance your resume. And we know that the purpose of the resume is to make sure that we sell and brand ourselves. Now, when an employer is evaluating you, the only thing that they have in front of them, of course, is that piece of paper called a resume. So you want to make sure that you market and you sell yourself on that resume. Next slide, please. Okay, so once again, we're just going to go through just a few tips. Next slide. Now, in starting your resume, you want to make sure that you center your information at the top of your resume, okay? You want to make sure you use a professional email address. But professional email address would usually include your name, not a nickname, not a pet name, but your name. My name, Rosie J. Carter, that's my name. So you want to make sure you have a professional email address. In terms of a phone number, you want to have just one phone number. You don't need an alternate phone number. So if you primarily get all your calls on a particular cell phone number, that's the one you want to use. If you use your land phone, which some of us still have a land phone, that's the number you want to use. You don't need all those alternate numbers there. And also too, you don't need to put a P for phone or E for email. I can look at it and tell that it's a phone number or email. So you don't need to add that on there. In terms of address, now address is optional. If you feel comfortable putting your address on your resume, put it there. If you don't. Because actually it's not really necessary, because when employers contact us, they usually will call you or they will send you an email. They may even text you. Most of them do not send you things in the mail before they've actually had the opportunity to interview you. So the address is really optional. Next slide, please. Now let's look at an objective versus a summary, which sometimes we get a little confused about. Objective versus a summary. Now, an objective statement tells the employer what you want from them, what you expect from them. A summary tells an employer what you can offer them, what you can bring to the table, okay? For example, this would be like a basic objective statement where you said, I'm looking to utilize my education and skills to secure a job with a respected employer with room for advancement. Now, a statement like that tells the employer what you want from them, what you want the employer to do for you. A summary or profile, it tells the employer what you can offer them, what you can bring to the table, how you can impact the bottom line. Now let's look at when to use one versus the other one. If you are a person with very limited work history, or you have very limited accomplishments, you might want to use an objective. Say if you're right out of school, you're right out of college, you don't have a lot of experience, you just graduated. So you might want to consider using an objective. If you have been in the workforce 10 years, 15 years, you should have a lot of accomplishments. You should have a lot to offer an employer. This would be an example where you may say, I'm bilingual. I have experience in sales and automotive. I can offer you 10 years diagnosing, maintaining, repairing, troubleshooting. I have education from the Universal Technical Institute, Ford Motor Company, etc. You're telling the employer what you can offer, what you can bring to the table, what you can do for them, okay? Let's look at a little example here, which you may not see on your screen, but it's another example where the candidate is telling the employer what they can bring to the table. For example, this one says, I'm an experienced security officer. I'm offering 10 years in the industry. That's what I can give you. That's what I can offer you. I'm able to patrol areas manually or with the car to provide a safe environment for the customers and the staff. I can do that for you. I have the ability to monitor a closed circuit TV, and I can perform random metal detector searches. I can do that for you. I can reduce crime and other illegal activities by 20%. I can review a surveillance camera footage to check for criminal activity and suspicious behavior. So you see, that's the difference between a summary and an objective. A summary is going to tell the employer, I can do this for you, I can offer you that, I can bring this to the table, I can impact your bottom line. That's the difference between a summary and an objective. Okay, let's look at some words that we want to use on our resume. Now, your resume should always be customized to the job that you are applying for. You don't want to use a one-size-fits-all generic cookie cutter resume. It won't work. You need a resume for every job you are applying for. So at the end of the day, you could have 4 or 5 resumes. If you are applying for a position in management, that's a resume. Say if you're applying for another position as a truck driver, that's another resume. You're applying for another position as an IT specialist, that's another resume. That's 3 right there. You never use the same resume for every job you apply for. Never use the same resume. Your resume has to make it past what we call the ATS system. That's a tracking system. The tracking system is like a huge scanner or a huge computer. It's going to scan your resume to look for keywords from the job description. So when you're writing your resume, you always want to make sure that you read the job description first, because you want to include keywords from the job description. You want to make sure those words are included in the resume. So when the scanner is scanning your resume from top to bottom, that scanner should be able to pick up some of those keywords or key phrases from your resume. If the scanner do not see those words or pick up those words, it will spit your resume out. And that resume can wind up in what we call a black hole or cyberspace, which means that it's just hanging out there. Nobody sees it, and it'll never get into the hands of the hiring manager. So always read the job description first and make sure you customize that resume according to that job description. Now, you may say, well, how do I know what keywords to include? Now, if I'm reading the job description, and if I see particular words used more than twice or more than once, I know that's very important for that employer. For example, just keep it simple. Just say if in that job description, it says, I need to know Microsoft Word, something simple. And if I see that listed 2 or 3 times, oh, wow, that's important to that employer. I better make sure that that's included in my resume. Or if I see I need to know CPR, oh, wow, that's important to that employer. I better make sure that phrase is in my resume. So anything that you see in that job description where it's listed several times, make sure it's included in your resume. And you want to write the words or express the words exactly the way they are in the job description. For example, if I'm using the word nonprofit, and if it's written in the job description as hyphenated, well, when I put it on my resume, you hyphenate it. If it's not hyphenated, then don't hyphenate it in your resume. So make sure you use that job description. It is key because you want to use those key words. Next slide, please. Also, too, we want to make sure that we include hard skills in our resume. Employers tend to pay a little bit more attention to hard skills versus the soft skills. Now, both of them are important. Your hard skills are important. Your soft skills are important. But for some reason, employers tend to pay a little bit more to those hard skills. Now, what are hard skills? Anything that's teachable, anything that I can quantify, anything that I can demonstrate prior to being hired is considered a hard skill. For example, let's give a few examples here. Suppose I'm applying for a position as a truck driver. I always like to keep stuff simple. And I tell the employer, oh yeah, I'm good at driving a truck. I know how to make wide turns. I can back up into docks, blah, 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 right? I'm telling them that. So the employer may say, okay, Ms. Carter, well, here's a truck right here. Demonstrate for me how you would back up into a dock. So I get in, either I can back up into that dock or I can't. Okay, Ms. Carter, demonstrate for me how you would make a wide turn where you're not all on top of the sidewalk and too close to other cars. So I get in the truck, either I can demonstrate it or not. That's a hard skill. Okay, Ms. Carter, you say you know how to drive this forklift machine. Here's a forklift machine right here. Demonstrate for me that you know how to operate that stand-up, sit-down forklift machine. So I get on, either I can do it or I can't. Okay, Ms. Carter, you say you can type 80 words a minute. Let me give you a typing test. Either I can type those 80 words or I can't. Those are classified as hard skill. Why? I can demonstrate them. I can show them to you. I can show you before you hire me that I can do the job. Soft skills are a little different. They're more like traits. It is something that comes from within. I cannot teach you a soft skill. You may say, well, oh, I'm nice. I can't teach you how to be nice. Oh, I have good customer service skills. I won't see that until after I hire you. Oh, I'm creative. Oh, I'm outgoing. I'm a good problem solver. I won't see those things until after I hire you. So once again, soft skills, I won't see till after I hire you. Hard skills, I can see before I hire you. Also, too, let's look at the need to know versus the nice to know on a resume. Now, on a resume, there's what we call the need to know, and there's what we call the nice to know. And sometimes we have resumes that could be 2, 3, 4 pages long sometimes, but it's with a bunch of fluff, a bunch of nice to know things that the employer really don't care about, but we throw them on that resume anyway as a filler. Now, let's look at what I mean, a need to know and a nice to know. Now, say if I was applying for a position as a truck driver. You notice I always use truck driver because a lot of our customers go into truck driving. So that's why you always use truck driving, okay? Now, let's look at what, as an employer, I need to know about you if you say you want this position as an over-the-road truck driver. I need to know that you have excellent safety and driving record. I need to know you know how to pre and post trip your vehicle. You know how to maneuver in and out of tight spaces. You can make wide turns. You can back up into docks. You can parallel park. You can maintain your log sheets. You have endorsements such as triples, doubles, hazmat, tankers, confined spaces. You can drive in all type of weather. Those are some of the things I need to know if you're applying for a position as a truck driver. Now, what would be nice to know? Oh, Miss Carter, I can type 100 words a minute. I don't care. Oh, Miss Carter, I can take vital signs. I really don't care. Oh, Miss Carter, I can drive a forklift. I can network computers. I can install software. That's nice, but I don't need to know that if you're applying for a position as a truck driver. So you give the employer what they need to know versus what's nice to know. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now also too, when we're writing a resume, we write the resume in fragments, phrases, or clauses. We never write a resume using full sentences, okay? Now you might say, why is she into all this grammar and stuff? Because grammar is so important on your resume. Poor grammar on a resume can get your resume tossed in the garbage, okay? So we wanna make sure the grammar is good. So when I write my resume, it's going to be in fragments, phrases, or clauses. The subject, I, is always implied. So I don't have to use full sentences. So I don't have to say, I did this or I did that. It's implied that I did it because it's my resume. Now, when you are writing the resume, you're using bullet points. I always suggest you use bullet points. Bullet points separates your information. It clarifies the information. It breaks down information. You only want about 2 sentences, or 2 lines, should I say, not a sentence, 2 lines per bullet point. If you have a bullet point and it's like 4 or 5 lines, that's too much information together. The employee can get confused. They can get bored. They can get thrown off. So break your information down. You want to begin each bullet point with a strong action verb, a powerful action verb. The verb should be either in the present tense if you're still there, or the past tense if you're no longer there. Never, ever, ever start a bullet point with a verb in what we call the progressive tense. The progressive tense is a verb that ends in ing. So I'm never going to start my bullet points off with progressive tense verb. It's either past tense if I'm no longer there, present tense if I'm still there. Never, ever the progressive tense. You also want to make sure that your verbs correlate with what you do. I should be able to simply look at your verbs and right away, I know exactly what you do. I know exactly what field you're in. Your bullet points should be powerful. They should be strong. They should speak volume. Words have power. So when you use verbs, you want to use powerful verbs. For example, if I'm in management or leadership, these are some powerful verbs I can use. Authorize, that got power to it. Execute, incorporate, overhaul. These are powerful verbs. Let's just even take the verb mandate. Mandate. Now, mandate can be either a verb or a noun, depending on how you use. But use as a verb. That verb, as you can notice, has a lot of power. That verb, that one verb, has changed the course of the country. So you want to make sure your verbs too are very, very powerful. You also too want to make sure when you're writing your resume, you list the name of the company, the city and the state, and your dates of employment, the start date and the end date, preferable the month and the year. Now, also too, when you're writing your resume, remember I said your resume is like a picture of you. You want to paint a good picture of you because that's all I got. I don't have an actual picture. I got the resume. So you want to paint a good picture of you. One of the ways that I can do that is by using numbers, dollar amounts, or frequencies, or outcomes, whenever possible, percentages. When I see numbers on a resume, it's a call center, and I make calls all day long. Oh, okay. That doesn't do a lot for me. Now, but if I say, now let's give it some detail. When you work in a call center, that you manage a multi-line phone system where you answer 125 to 150 calls a day, resulting in a 25% increase in referrals. Wow. You painted a picture of yourself. Because I'm looking at those numbers. Wow, she answers 125 to 150 calls a day. Wow. 25% increase in referrals. Wow. Because as an employer, I'm looking at dollar signs. I'm looking at the bottom line. So you want to be able to show me or demonstrate for me how you can impact my bottom line. And you can do that with numbers, dollar amount, or percentages. If you're in sales, you don't want to just say, well, I sold some products. No, be specific. You might say something like sold household furniture, generating an average of $10,000 daily in sales and revenue. You're going to get my attention. You're painting a picture. Let's look at one more because I want this to be clear. This is how you paint pictures on your resume. Say if you are in your IT specialist, something like that. And I see on your resume, you say, I saved the organization $1.5 million in operating costs by spearheading complex assignments to consolidate and modify vendor package programs to use with existing information systems. When I see that $1.5 million, I'm about to go out of my mind, okay? So you want to make sure that, number one, you use dollar amount, percentages, you can even give me deliverable. That's how you paint pictures for the employer. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of education and training. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Education and training. You want to make sure that you always include education, professional development, or higher learning on your resume, whether they're workshops, whether they're webinars, seminars, it doesn't matter. You want to be able to show the employer that you are updated, you are current, and you're keeping up with the times. So you should always have a category for education and training. You're going to include the name of the school that you attended, the city and the state, the type of degree or certificate that you have, and the year you completed, not when you started, but you could have started 10 years ago. I'm more interested in when you completed. Now, if you completed your education or certification more than 10 years ago, please do not put that on there. Do not put the date on there. For example, I graduated in the 80s myself, late 80s. So I wouldn't put that on there. Why? Number one, it's going to age me and it's too far back. So I would not put that date on my resume. So you only want to include current things, and that's within the last 10 years. So the name of the school, the city and the state, start date, end date, and the year if it's less than 10 years. So now you may say, well, Ms. Carter, I haven't attended anything recently for professional development. Well, you probably have. You probably have. You're on this webinar. You're on this webinar. You can put that on your resume as professional development. Now, Professional development does not always have to be formal, where you get a certificate or where you get a degree or something at the end, because I'm not going to give out certificate for this webinar, but you can still add it to your resume as professional development. If you're in a staff meeting, many times in a staff meeting, there's training. Most of the time when I have a staff meeting with my company, a lot of it is training. What is that? Professional development. So it doesn't always have to be formal, but make sure you have something on your resume under education and professional development. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at professional references. Let's look at references. Now, references are important. Now, if you have at the bottom of your resume, you know, the little phrase that says references available upon request, you might want to remove that. It's outdated, number one. You want to use that space for something else. And if I see that on that resume, references available upon request, number one, I know you're not updated. So you don't want that employer to know that. So take that off of your resume if you have it there. Now, most companies want at least 3 references, 2 professional, 1 personal. Now, depending on the type of job you're looking for, they may ask for 5, but the standard is 3. Okay, now let's look at these references. Well, we should take in considerations. Now, references are important, very important. That reference can make you or break you. So you want to be very, very careful who you use as a reference. Now, I can ask your references questions about you that would be illegal for me to ask an employer. That's why it's important. Under EEOC guidelines, Title 7, I'm limited to what I can ask an employer about you. They are limited in terms of what they can say about you. Now, by law, the only thing I should be asking about you, your start date, your end date. Will I rehire you? That's it. I should not be asking questions such as, how many days was Miss Carter late? Or was she ever late? Did she call up a lot? Did she get along with other people? Did she come to work every day? How was her work performance? Was she good at what she did? Here to tell me. So that's why your references are important, because I can ask them certain things that I cannot ask the employer. Now let's look at selecting these references. Number one, before you use anybody as a reference, you always get their permission. You never, ever, ever use a person's name without their permission. Never, okay? Now, you also want to make sure that you and that reference have a good rapport, a good relationship. References can break you. They say the wrong thing, that's the end of you. So you want to make sure you have a good relationship. Make sure they like you. You also want to make sure that you give each one of your references a copy of your resume. Also, too, you want to make sure that you sit down with that reference and you go over that resume. You explain some things on that resume. So just in case the employer asks your reference questions from that resume, they can answer it. So make sure you explain that resume to them. Also, too, with your references, you want to make sure that they are a duplicate or a replica of you. Now, there's certain things that I expect of you as an employer. Well, I expect the same thing from those references. On your resume, I expect you to have a professional email address. Now, when you give me the email address of one of your references, I expect the same thing. And not one of these crazy emails with nicknames and pet names. No, that's a poor reflection on you. I also expect you to be accessible, which means that I shouldn't have to call you 4 or 5 times about a job before I can get you. Well, same thing with your references. I shouldn't have to call Jane Doe over here 5 times before I can get a reference on you. Or if I leave Jane Doe a message and it takes Jane Doe a whole week before she gets back to me. So your references must be accessible. I leave them an email. I expect them to get back to me in a timely manner. That's so important. If it takes that reference too long to respond, I've gone on to another person. So be careful who you use as references. They can make or break you. Now, I've had people ask me before, well, Ms. Carter, how do I know what my references are saying about me? Well, this is what I've done. And you can do this too if you want. You know, it might not be the best thing, but this is what I did. It worked for me. I had it was like a 3-way conversation going where I had someone to call each one of my references that I had listed. And I wanted to hear myself, what they were saying about me. So I was pretty much on the other end. I was listening to what they were saying. And I must say that all the references, and I had 5, all of them had positive things to say. So I left them on my list. Now, if either one of my references had said anything negative or remotely negative about me, I would have taken them off. Even if a reference but you, take them off. You know what I mean by but you? You know, you may say, well, you know, Rosie is good, but she's all right. She's okay. What is the employer going to remember? That employer is going to remember everything after the but. She is good, but she did this, but they're going to remember the but, everything after the but. So if you have a reference who but you, take them off of your list. You also want to make sure you include your strongest reference first. That should be the person at the top. I always list my strongest reference first. Why? A lot of times employers may only call the first 2. They may only call the first one. So you want to make sure that first one is a good one. I may call a reference. And if that reference is outstanding, that reference is good, I may not even call the other 2 people. So you want to make sure that the strongest person is listed first. By the same token, if you got the weakest person first, and if I call that person, they give you a bad reference, I may take everything, depending on the employer, they may take everything based on what that first person said. So always list the strongest one first. You want to make sure that you discuss with your references what type of information you can give out. Is it okay to give out your phone number plus the email? That's fine. Phone number plus where you work plus your title. That's fine. So always ask your references what information is okay to provide to that employer. Next slide, please. Okay, proofreading. We want to make sure that we proofread, spell check, proofread, spell check, proofread, spell check over and over and over again before we give that resume to that employer. What does errors say about us? Errors say that you are a liability to that company. That's what errors say. Errors say that you don't care, you're sloppy, you're unprofessional, and of course you shouldn't work there. That's what errors say about you. So that's why it is so important to proofread, to spell check over and over again. Remember grammar now. Grammar is important. It can make you or break you. Now let's look at some things we can do to make sure we catch some of our errors. Number 1, as soon as you finish that draft copy, you always read it out loud. When you read out loud, your voice projects into the universe and you can hear yourself, and you should be able to pick up some of your own errors. Then after you finish, give that resume to a second set of eyes. Here, John, here, Ken, here, Bob, read this to me. So now you have two sets of eyes, two sets of ears, checking and listening for errors. Between the two of you, you should be able to pick up some errors. Now, when you are giving your resume to a second set of eyes, it is preferred that you give it to someone in your field, especially if you work in one of those fields where you use a lot of acronyms or jargon, like IT. Now, if a person in IT bring a resume to me, yes, I can proofread it. I can check it for content and quality. I can check it for things like that. But if they have a lot of jargons or acronyms that I don't understand, well, I don't know if it's right or wrong. So I would recommend that they take it to another IT person who would recognize that jargon, those acronyms. I find it to be a lot like that in the medical field, where they use sometimes a lot of terminologies I may not understand. Once again, I can check it for content and quality, but you use some of those terminologies, BID, PRN, and a few other things you use, I may not know what that means. So I would recommend you give it to someone in your field who would recognize those terminologies. Another thing too, that we want to be very, very mindful of, and I see this a lot. And the reason I say that because I'm checking resumes all the time. It's kind of part of my job, check resumes. And I see over and over and over again, these little words that people misuse when they're writing cover letters, thank you letters, resumes, or what have you. And these little words that we misuse can send out the wrong message about us. These little words that we misuse are called homonyms, okay? Now, depending on when you went to school, you may have learned it as a homophone. In my era, they were called homonyms, okay? It all depends on, it's the same thing, depending on when you went to school, okay? What are homonyms? It's those little words that we use all the time. They sound alike, but they have different spelling and different meaning, but they sound alike. So you have words such as there, T-H-E-R-E, there, T-H-E-I-R, they are, T-H-E-Y, apostrophe R-E, but they are. Now, when I say them, they sound alike, don't they? There, there. Sound alike. But there, T-H-E-R-E, is a noun. It's over there. T-H-E-I-R is a pronoun. This is their car. T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, that stands for they are, but they sound alike. And I see them misused all the time. Effective with the E, affected with the A, all the time, misused. Two, T-O, T-O-O, T-W-O, two. They sound alike. But if it's not used in the right content, it sends out the wrong message. Here, H-E-A-R, H-E-R-E, sound alike. So you want to make sure that you have an eye for these type of words. Why? Because spell check may not pick up these errors. Depending on what type of software application you have, it may not catch these errors. So you, the individual, have to have an eye for detail. Okay, it's very important that your resume is error-free. Next slide, please. We're gonna wrap this up in a minute. Okay, then it's the format and layout. Okay, let's look at some cosmetic things that can make a difference in your resume as well. Now, margin. You want to try to use a 1-inch margin all the way around. Okay, now that's not cut in stone, 1-inch margin all the way around. If you find that using a 1-inch margin all the way around, say would push 3 or 4 lines on that second page. You don't want a 2-page resume and the second page got 3 or 4 lines. So you just go back and you adjust the margins, like a 0.8 or 0.9, so everything fits on one page. Also, too, you want a single space throughout the resume. Now, you could have, with the headings, like your name and work history and education, those are headings. You could double space those, but your bullet points should be single space. Use black ink. from start to finish. You don't use green ink or yellow ink or purple ink. It's black ink. Sometimes I see resumes, people trying to be, colorful and what have you. I mean, that's all fine, but you want to use black ink throughout the resume. And also too, all those different colored inks can throw off the scanner. You want to use a font size of no more than 11 or 12. Now, if you use, say, like a 9 or 8, and you're trying to fit everything on one page, it's not going to work, because if I'm reading your resume and I'm taxing my eyes like this, I'm not going to sit there and read that. So you want to use a font size 11 or 12. Now, the average person has nothing to do with age. Average person wear reading glasses. I need my reading glasses to read. So if I'm doing this, that means that font size is too small. You want to use 11 or 12. Now, your name can be larger because you always want your name to stand out. So my name could be a 14 or 16 because I want it to stand out. The rest of the resume, 11 or 12. You also want to use one font style throughout the resume from top to bottom. If you're using Tahoma at the top, you use it at the bottom. Garmin at the top, use it throughout the resume. Calibri, Cambria, Georgia, whatever font style you start off in, that's the style you want to complete throughout the resume. Be consistent. Next slide, please. You also want to make sure, let's look at the length. Now, I'm often asked, how long should my resume be? It's 2 pages too long. I got 3 pages, is that too much? Well, let's look at a couple of rule of thumbs. If you have 10 years or less work experience, you should be able to fit that on 1 page. 1 page, you should be. If you have more than 10 years or more, then I could see you going to 2 pages. Now, if you are a CEO level at that level, then I could see you having a 4 or 5 page resume. But today I'm basically talking about a standard business resume, which is usually 1 or 2 pages. I'm not even talking about government resumes. Government resumes can be 10 or 15 pages, depending on how much information they want you to provide. A VTAE, the same thing. I'm not talking about VTAEs today. They could be 15 to 20 pages, depending on what the company wants. We're talking about standard business resume, which is either 1 page or 2 pages. Okay, let's look at the next slide, please. Okay, what we don't want to do, what we don't want to include, we're wrapping it up. Now, not write your resume in a template. A template gives your resume that cookie cutter look. You want to use a Word document. Why? Because with the Word document, it is much easier to kind of cut and paste, revise information. I find that when customers use templates, and then they may come to me and say, Ms. Carter, can you help me add this or change this and so on and so forth. Now, using a template, sometimes this is what will happen. I may change some information over here, then it throws out something over there. Then I fix that, then it throws out something over there. And at the end of the day, a lot of times I wind up having to retype the resume, and that's extra work. So if you use a Word document, it is much, much easier. Also, do not include charts or tables or graphs. Now, it may look pretty, but it can throw the scanner off. The scanner can pick it up as a foreign object. So you don't want to use tables and charts and graphs. Do not include photos. You don't want to put pictures. You take these little selfies and put them on your resume. Does not belong on a resume. The only time I should see a picture on a resume is if you are applying for a position, say as a model, and the employer want to see how photogenic you are. Well, that's understandable. Or if you're in some form of entertainment, sometimes they want pictures. Other than that, you would never put a picture on your resume. It can just open up that can of discrimination, of the employer being biased, and you don't want that. You want to eliminate that. Also, too, borders. Sometimes we got all these borders around the resume, trying to make it look pretty. Not supposed to look pretty. It's supposed to look professional. Borders take up space, extra space. Borders can make the resume look like a picture frame or menu. So you don't want that look to it. So don't include borders. nor do you want to put too much information in bold print. That can throw the scanner off too. Now, if you got your name in bold print and maybe the headings in bold print, name of the company, city and the state, start date in it, that's enough. Too much information in bold print can also throw the scanner off. And I know we put stuff in bold print because we want it to stand out, but remember now, it also has to get through the tracking system. Italics, we don't want to use italics. Your resume should never be written in italics. The only time you should use italics is if you are making reference to, say, a book title or newspaper article. Other than that, you never use italics. Now, it is very common for people who are in journalism, who are writers, staff writers, to use italics on the resume. That's the field they're in, because they may be making reference to, say, an article that they had printed in XYZ magazine or newspaper. So they're going to put it in italics. Other than that, it is no need to use italics. Too much underline. You don't want to put stuff in underline too many things. You know, sometimes we have the headings underlined. We have keywords underlined. You don't underline anything. Underlining takes up extra space. Underlining can also throw the tracking system off. We got to get past that tracking system. I don't care what type of good information you have on that resume. If it cannot get past that tracking system, it will never get into the hands of that hiring manager. Okay, last slide, please, the wrap up. And again, thank you so much for attending. I really do appreciate all of you. I do hope that I've covered some information that can help you enhance your resume. And I know for some of you, you probably know all of this, but it's nothing wrong with hearing it a second time. And at this juncture, I would take a few minutes before I have to jump off, and I will answer some questions. So are there any questions? And again, my name is Rosie Carter, and I am a career coach with Employer Services. Hello, no questions?
Hi, Rosie, this is Dan again. We did get some questions here in the chat.
Hey, Dan.
I just want to reiterate for folks that are on the call, if you do have any questions for Rosie, go ahead and throw those into the chat and we'll ask as time allots. So Rosie did get a question here. This individual asks, are there any recommendations on developing some of the hard skills for those who need a little more experience or job prerequisites, especially if they're fresh out of college?
Oh, okay, yeah. Right out of college, you can even make reference to maybe some of the things that you did in college. Sometime in college, you could have been a tutor. That could be a hard skill. Sometime in college, you could have been a classroom assistant. That could be, you could use that. Absolutely. That could be a hard skill as well as a transferable skill. So right out of college, there are a lot of ways you could build your resume up, because believe it or not, you probably did a lot more than you realized you did. Even if you were in some type of organization, if you were on a committee, what skills did you use to be in that organization? What skills did you use to be on that, serve on that committee?
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Rosie. And our next question that I see here in the chat, this individual asks, how do you handle an employment gap on your resume?
Oh, okay, it all depends on what you were doing. I mean, if you were a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, you could put that in that gap. Professional homemaker, were you in school, or even to the point where you were in the system, if you were in the correctional facility, if you were in there for 4 years, okay, chances are you was in there, you might have had a job, you can include that. Now, I know sometimes people say, why would I put that there? Well, when they do the background check, they're gonna find it anyway. So you tell your story first. Whatever your gap was, whatever you were doing, include that in there. Did you volunteer somewhere?
Looks like you froze up for just a second, Rosie, but I think we got
Okay.
you back now. You're good.
Okay.
Next question that I have here, this individual asks, the company laid off the whole department and I don't have any references. What should I do for references? Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, now your references don't always have to be your immediate manager, supervisor. Your reference can be anyone who can vouch for your work ethics. Do you have any friends who can vouch for you? What about some of the co-workers you had? What about some other people who worked in your department? You know, it doesn't always have to be someone you work directly with, but someone who can vouch for your work ethics.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Rosie. And another question that we got here. This individual says, I have 30 years of work experience. How can I avoid age discrimination issues? I know you covered some of this in your presentation.
Yeah, you'll only go back 10 years, because believe me, anything past 10 years is probably outdated anyway. So your resume can start really with 2011 or even 2012, because we're almost in the new year. So I don't want to see anything from the 90s, the 80s that's too far back. Give me the last 10 years of your work history. And that way you don't age yourself.
Awesome. And Rosie, kind of in that same vein, somebody else had put a good point here in the chat. They said, some of the assessment tests ask if you are over 40, how to move up to get your resume in somebody's hands. So if they ask that question in an assessment, what would you suggest doing to continue to get that resume flowing to the person that it needs to get to?
Okay, now sometimes with them assessments, those assessment tests, it may give you the option of choose not to answer. Then I would select that, okay? Do not wish to answer. I would select that. If it doesn't give you that option and you cannot move to the right, to the next screen until you answer, then you just have to answer it. But if you have an option that says choose not to answer, I would check that one.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosie. And I do see we had another kind of age-related question here in the chat. I do believe Rosie covered that, but again, I'll ask the question. Rosie, this individual asks, how do we make a good judgment about the time frame of our resume? What information is too old? I think you just covered that, but is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, just really just knowing your field. That's where that comes in. Like I know my field and I know what information is outdated. And also too, when you take updated webinars and updated training like this, you would know what's outdated in your field. So that's, you always have to stay on top of it. And those outdated things, those are outdated jargons and acronyms, don't use them anymore.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Rosie. And I do want to, just reiterate, if you do have any questions for Rosie while we still have her on, now would be the time to ask your question. Rosie, do you have a hard time that you need to jump off the webinar, just so we know and we're respectful of that?
About 5 after late. I can give a few more minutes. So if there are a few more questions, I'll stay on and answer. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Rosie. So again, if you do have questions for her, don't hesitate to ask. We still have her on. Somebody did ask, Rosie, how do you use this webinar for resume? So we'll kind of reframe that question. How would you suggest that they present it on their resume? Maybe is a better way to pose that.
Okay, they can put it on, it goes under education #1. So they can say education/professional development. Okay, that's a heading. Then you can include the name of the workshop or the webinar, which is selling your strengths and enhancing your brand, today's date. The title, selling your strengths and enhancing your brand. That's the name of the webinar. And then you put today's date. That's it. It goes under education/professional development.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification, Rosie. We did get another question in the chat. This individual asked, if I remove outdated information from my resume, it will be too short because I worked for the same company or the same job for a long time. In this case, do you think that's a good idea?
Well, you still could go, and if that's the person that had the 30 years, you could still give me the last 10 years. And probably over the years, your title may have changed. Like I've been with this company for 10 years. I started off with one title, now I have another title. So what I would do is, what titles did I have the last 10 years? And that I would use. And within 10 years, you should have accomplishments. You should have quite a bit in 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rosie. And again, if you do have any questions for Rosie, we still have her for approximately 5 minutes or so.
Couple of minutes.
Yeah, so if you do have any questions for her, please throw those into the chat. We'll get them answered. Rosie, an individual asks, can I put babysitting in my resume, even if I'm applying for, let's say, an IT position?
If that's a filler, I would put it in as a daycare provider. You know, it's depending on what choice of verbs or adjectives that you use. If it's a filler, if it's not, then, you know, I wouldn't put it in because it has nothing, of course, to do with being an IT specialist. But someone asked me earlier about, you know, gaps. So if that's a filler for you, that fills a gap, I would put it in as a daycare provider. If not, then no.
Understood. Thank you for that, Rosie. Another question came in here. The last job that I completed was an internship in 2018. Supervisor no longer works with the company. Other than that, I do not have many references. Any suggestions? Same type of deal that you explained earlier, Rosie?
Yes, anyone who can vouch for. And I know with COVID and things have changed quite a bit, and we've lost contact with people. People went home, work remotely. I do understand that. So anyone who can vouch for your work ethics, you could use that person. Okay, for example, I'll use my pastor. Okay, I did things down at the church or what have you. Good work ethics there. You know, it was all volunteer, but he could vouch for me. Okay, Rosie comes in every day. She's on time. She does this well. She does that. He could vouch for me. So it doesn't have to be anyone who worked directly with you. It could be someone who could just vouch for your work ethics.
Awesome example. Thank you for that, Rosie. Another good question that did come in here, I think, kind of in this COVID pandemic situation, this individual asked, does the fact that we are immunized need to go on our resume?
You know, I wouldn't reveal that. I wouldn't put that in. As we can see, it's a big controversy regarding, you know, being vaccinated, not being vaccinated. I wouldn't put it on. Now, if you're in the interview and the interviewer asks you, and it is legal to ask, it does not violate HIPAA laws if the employer say, oh, Ms. Carter, have you been vaccinated? Now, it's up to you if you want to answer it, but I would not put it on my resume.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification, Rosie. And again, if you have any last questions for Rosie before she has to hop off, please feel free to throw those into the chat. And last call for any additional questions for Rosie. One more question we had in here, Rosie. This individual asks, I have not worked full-time for a year. I just do seasonal work. What can I do? Any suggestions for those folks?
Just, yeah, add your seasonal jobs on. Absolutely. It shows that you were productive. Add those on. Even if you haven't worked a full time in a year, you were doing something. Some people work with staffing agencies, and the projects or assignments only last a few months. Put that on.
Excellent. Thank you, Rosie. And again, any last minute questions for Rosie before she has to hop off here, please feel free to throw those into the chat. Any additional questions for Rosie before we let her move on to her next meeting?
I just have, I apologize. I have one question I would like to verify. This is Will. On the education, you said if it's past 10 years, do not put the year on there?
Right. So if you got a bachelor's degree in 1990, that's way back. I wouldn't put the date on. You still put the degree on, not the date.
Okay.
If you got your degree, say last year, 5 years ago, then you could put the date on. So the rule of thumb is 10 years or greater. 10 years or greater, do not put it on. Just a little less, you can put it on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And I do believe we'll go ahead. We have one last question here in the chat,
Okay.
I think, Rosie. So this individual ask, what if they were dealing with medical issues for, let's say, the past year? How do they kind of explain that gap, if you will, on their resume? Do they explain that, or how would you suggest handling that situation, Rosen?
You said they had some medical issues?
Yeah, for, let's say, the past year or so, and they were unemployed during that time. How would you suggest maybe explaining that gap on a resume if they were unemployed during that time, or would you?
Oh, okay, no, first of all, I would not mention anything about my medical condition. Okay, that's going to open up a can of worms, even though it's illegal for the employer to ask you anything about your medical condition, but you don't want to bring attention to it. Now, if it was within the last year or so, now, you know, we've been dealing with COVID in the last year. You could easily get away with that. You don't have to mention that on your resume. Why were you unemployed? Well, you know, I got laid off from my last job due to COVID, and I'm still looking. But do not mention your medical condition, and don't even mention it in the interview.
Understood. Thank you for that clarification, Rosie. Much appreciated. I think at this time, we're going to go ahead and close off questions for Rosie. Let her hop on the next session that she needs to be on. Rosie, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everybody for attending, and best wishes to you. Good luck to you. Just name it and claim it, and it's yours. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rosie. Our next presenter today is going to be Ken with ENES. Ken is going to go over, I do believe, some tips to how to kind of navigate the interview process. Ken, are you available to present, sir?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Excellent. You can begin whenever you're ready, Ken.
We're gonna jump right in. Okay, great. I hope you all picked up some very valuable information that Rosie just delivered. I always learn something when I listen to Rosie's workshops. I've been working with her for 5 years, and I'm still listening to her workshops when I get the chance, and I always learn something good. My name is Kenneth Fobbs. I'm also with Employment and Employer Services. My title basically is the Business Services Manager, or excuse me, Business Services Representative. So I help connect employers to you all as job seekers. Next slide, please. I just want to give a quick thank you for everyone to and welcome on behalf of the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. The partnership is the one that is the umbrella organization that operates the public workforce system here in the city of Chicago and for Cook County. The partnership has helped more than 70,000 individuals in finding employment through the last since 2012. They have administered more than $400 million in federal and philanthropic funds. They've connected to over 2,000 employers. They are considered the partnership as an umbrella organization, and fitting within that umbrella are 90 plus community-based organizations, American Job Centers, satellite office, and they serve more than 140,000 people annually. Next slide. ENES, we are one of those organizations. We operate basically throughout the city of Chicago and the suburbs. We're in Will County, and we've now opened up some offices out in West and Kane and DuPage area. We operate 4 of what's called the American Job Centers, and all of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funds, the WIOA, are free. So remember that, please, they are free. It's free to work with us. You don't have to pay for that kind of assistance. Next slide, please. Just want to give you a quick little inspirational quote. Today is only one day in all the days that will ever be. But what will happen in all the other days that will ever come can depend on what you do today. So think about that as you review your notes on what you learned from Rosie today, Ms. Carter. Hopefully I can provide you with some good tips in terms of interviewing. I'll do my best. And let's continue on. Let's jump right in. And this is the inside track to interviewing with confidence. Again, that's me, Kenneth Fobbs, Business Service Representative for Employment and Employer Services. Next slide, man. What are we going to cover? Goals, your goals, the employer's goals. You know, when you're attending an interview, you have goals and your employer has goals. So it's all about meeting basically a happy medium, and hopefully you gaining employment. We're going to talk about how to prepare, first impressions and body language, communication and employer questions, the closing, your questions, because there always comes a point where an employer will say, do you have any questions for me? And you want to be able to ask a couple of questions based on what you heard and what your research, basically, right? So, and then there's always the follow-up or next steps. That is very important. At the end of an interview, there's always next steps. So let's, and then again, once we get to the end of this, hopefully there'll be a few questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Next slide. So goals, what are your goals when you go to an interview? You want to make sure you sell your experiences and skills. Rosie talked about how to set your resume up to make sure that it reflects your experience and your skill level. So that's what you want to present when you're talking to your employer. You want to show some enthusiasm and demonstrate that you are a good fit. A big part of an interview is not only knowing the employer, knowing that you can do the job. They also want to know, will you fit within their environment? Are you good to be around? They want to know, okay, can I turn this person loose in my company? Will they go in there and everyone all of a sudden is scared to death and ready to leave? Or can they fit in and be an excellent team player and help move along the goal? So evaluate if you are a good match, and also if it's if that company is a good match for you. So that interview goes both ways. So remember that, please. Next slide. And again, the employer's goals. They're looking at your personality, your experience, your accomplishments. Are you skilled to do the job? So you can have all the experience and skill in the world, but if your personality says that they really don't want to be around you, you won't get the job, believe me. So you want to make sure that you are being a good fit, a good person, and someone that they want to spend time with. Next slide. Preparing for the interview. This is step one. Next slide, Dan. So you want to be the most impressive candidate by doing your research. What does that mean? Before you go to that interview, you want to go check the news out. We have the internet now, so you can Google everything. When in doubt, Google it. So you can Google information, find out what the company is doing, any new recent events new events that have come up because of this company, whether it's a new application, new software, or just maybe they purchased a new business recently. Those are all good things to take with you into the interview. And what does that do? That gives you a certain level of confidence. A big part of your interview is showing that you are confident in your skin, you're confident in yourself and your abilities. And a big part of being confident is knowing information. So do what you can to learn what you can about a particular company that you're interviewing with. You have Facebook, you can look at the different posts. Believe me, employers now can look at your Facebook. So make sure that you're taking care of that. Don't post anything you wouldn't want your mother to see. You know, back in the day, you can see I'm kind of gray. So back then, you didn't want to get in trouble and come home and have your mother looking at you crazy. So keep that kind of mindset. Make sure whatever you're posting on Facebook is legitimate for your parents or your children to look at, and they won't look at you crazy when they see it, okay? And find out about the people you're interviewing. You can go on LinkedIn, you might be able to find the exact person you're meeting or other people in that particular department at the company. So do your research. You got to do your due diligence to help prepare you for the interview. And again, what does that do? That helps build your confidence level once you are sitting in front. An interview is really a conversation. I know it's a major conversation because it can determine your future, but you're basically talking one-on-one, either with one person or it might be a group of people. But the more research you do, the more confidence you will have in that situation. Next slide. Interviews come in different flavors these days. You meet with someone, excuse my sound back there. You complete your online application, right? That's step one. Or actually that would be maybe step two, because you just completed Rosie's Miss Carter's class. So you know you have to make sure your resume is together. So really that would be step one, is to make sure your resume is together. Then once you complete the application, that's step two. Now someone's called you and you have a phone screen, right? So when you have that phone screen, you might want to stand up. I've heard where people say stand up during the call, smile. You want to stay upbeat. You don't want to do a phone screen and you got the kids and the dog barking all around you. People are screaming all in the house. And you want to find a quiet space without a whole lot of distractions. Keep your resume next to you. Matter of fact, keep your resume and the job description, maybe even the date and time that you completed your application. You want that next to you. Create a portfolio. I have a little binder here. I don't know if you can see my little binder. Nope, not showing up too good. It's white, that's why. But I have a binder here. When you, in that binder, right, a portfolio, you can keep your resume. You can keep a listing of all the positions you've applied to, because right now people are applying to multiple jobs throughout the week. They might do 10, 15 resumes per week or per day almost. But you want to make sure you have that information. You may not get a call back from an employer for a couple of weeks. So when they call you to say, hey, I want to talk to you, Ken, about this, we have your application here, don't forget about who you're talking to. Once you find out their name, you want to be able to go to your portfolio, flip to their information, and now you've got the job description there. You know the date and time that you completed the application, and you're ready to talk. You have your resume with you, so you're ready to get into that moment. Take charge of that scene for yourself. And again, preparation will help you out. Avoid long-winded answers. Try to stay focused on how you're answering particular questions, and try to close on a strong note. What does that mean? You want to know what the next step is. Next steps, we're going to talk about it at the end, but really next steps come throughout the process. You want to know, okay, well, what happens after this call? Can we schedule a time to talk later for my next level of the interview? So those are all things you can ask at that time to find out, right? And you make sure that you're staying on top of it. Thank them for their time. Hey, I appreciate you calling. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. So have a smile on your face even while you're talking on the phone. You never know how much, or maybe people don't think about just how much your attitude or how you're feeling internally comes through on that phone. So have a smile. It's a good opportunity. You're interviewing with someone. Who knows what the next few days would bring if everything works out correctly, right? Next slide, Dan. So as I said, you completed the schedule. You scheduled an interview, right? This is all part of your phone screen. So now it comes to maybe a face-to-face interview. So that face-to-face interview can either be virtually. Right now, people are using such as this Zoom. You might have had a few. Some of you have had a Zoom interview through the computer or Microsoft Teams. There's just so many different applications. You don't have to be familiar with all of them, but just understand that the process now. So you go from the application online to a phone screen, and now you're having some type of maybe a virtual or face-to-face type interview. So all of that preparation you're doing helps carry you through this whole process. If you're doing a virtual interview, you can practice with either one of them. You can practice. It says have a friend or family member to conduct mock interviews. So practice with people. Everybody has a fancy phone right now. You've got iPhones, Samsung, Google phones. They've got 3D cameras now. You can record whole movies on your phone. So maybe record your interview. let them, whoever you're with, or set it on some type of stand, record your interview, go back and take a look at it. How do you come across on camera or sitting in front of someone? You'll learn quite a bit about yourself if you record that interview, believe me. Now, moving into, say, a face-to-face, well, hopefully we're coming out of this COVID crisis sometime soon. But as you do face-to-face interviews, be careful of what you eat. You might want to eat a little something before you go, but be mindful of what you're eating. You know, certain meals give off certain fumes that are irritating to people. I know that some people that smoke or used to smoke. Now, if you walk in the room and you smoke cigarettes and whatnot, and the person sitting there no longer smokes or has quit smoking, they smell you before you even walk in the room. So you want to be prepared for that and make sure that those things aren't going to be the negative that keeps you from getting the job, okay? Try to arrive maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most early. You don't want to show up at someone's office half an hour or hour early and then walk in and say, I'm here to meet Kenneth at Mr. Fobbs at 9 o'clock and it's 8 o'clock. So because people have a busy schedule, they're going to try to accommodate you, but you're really thrown off their whole day, and that sits in the back of their mind as they're talking to you. So make sure you arrive maybe 10 minutes early, 15 at the most. Practice before you go. Once you know the date and time of your interview, take a practice run at different times a day, or at least prior to that, so you know just how long it takes you, what route is maybe best to go. And again, all that's part of your preparation to make sure that it turns out successful. And also dress appropriately. You don't have to wear a suit all the time. The dress is really dependent on the type of position you're interviewing for, right? You want to have clean clothes, as clean as possible, but you don't have to wear a suit. Men, ladies, you don't have to wear a suit and tie for every interview. Just depends on what type of job. If you're working in manufacturing in a warehouse somewhere, you don't have to wear a suit and tie. You might want to put a shirt on, at least a nice pair of pants and a shirt. You can even wear your boots. Some people would wear a tie, but dress appropriately for the interview. If it's in an office, you may want to put on that suit. So, but dress appropriately and present yourself in the right way. Next slide. First impressions. First impressions and body language. What's your first impression? We have first impressions all the time. Day and night, you have first impressions of people even when you don't know it. You walk in the store, you see someone, you think you like them, whatever, that's a first impression. Or you see someone maybe you feel like you don't like. You've never even said a word to them, but just the vibe they give off can determine if you think that you're going to like them or not. Now, it might be correct, it might be wrong, but you still have that first impression. So you want to try to bring out the best impression you can when you go to an interview. Dan, next slide. And how long does it take? How long does that first impression take? You know, I know some older people, older than myself, that says, you know, when they were younger, they tell me, Ken, when I was young, it took me 2 hours to figure somebody out, or half the day to figure somebody out. As they got older, that time got shorter. And I don't know if it's just their impatience now or what it is, but they figured it in about 30 seconds. You remember the show that used to say, name that tune. And I can name that tune in 3 beats, 5 beats. Well, the older you get, or the more you meet people and interact with people, that time gets shorter. This says you can maybe within the first 5% or first minute, 5% of the employers or HR people say they have really made a hiring decision. That's within the first minute. That's 60 seconds. That's pretty quick. You've barely gotten a chance to walk in, shake hands or bump fists and say hello, and they've already decided if they're going to hire you. That's human nature. That's not a negative on them, but it's human nature. So 30% say they've decided within the first 5 minutes, 60% within the first 15 minutes. Many times it happens quicker than that. You can lose it in the first 15 seconds. If you walk into an interview, let me tell you, you walk into an interview and all you're thinking about is when you left home, whoever it is you're with when you left home, but everybody was fighting. It was noise everywhere. They didn't take the dog out. They didn't take them. You missed the trash man again today. If you take that kind of negative energy with you into an interview, you'll be in part of that 5%, that first minute range, right? In terms of losing or really having to fight back. It's like the Bulls. You get up by 20 points, now you're down. Somebody comes back into the game late in the game. So you're playing catch up the whole time. So you want to make sure that when you walk into that space, or actually before you get to that space, you put yourself in the right mind frame, mindset. Be mindful of where you're at, what your goal is, which is to handle the business, and how you're going to get there. So get rid of all the negative energy that you had before you got there. Do your best and just think of good things and how maybe this will turn out to something that will be outstanding in the next few years. Myself, I used to put on music. I have music before I leave the house. So I put on different kinds of music. For some people, music puts you in the right mindset. For some, it's jazz. For some, it's rock or gospel, hip hop, whatever puts you in the right mind frame to be positive and to bring the best of you out. Put that on before you leave your house and work that all the way to your interview and beyond. Don't stop at the door. Keep it all the way till you get back in your car, back to the bus stop on the way home or to your next appointment. But you want to make sure that you are bringing the best of you out. So try to do that as you go to these interviews. Next slide. What to wear. We talked about it a little bit. So business professional, business casual, for both men and women. Really, it's a lot of that is based on just the type of interview you're going to. If you're going into an office setting, you might definitely, if it's a financial type situation, but if you're going into an office setting, you might want to wear a suit, or definitely business casual. The gentleman on the end, the business casual, you might want to put a jacket on with that. The young lady there with the, I don't know, the short pants, I forget what they call those, capri pants maybe. You really have to fit what's happening. So you might want to wear a suit. That might can work. Take some time before your interview, do your research, find out how people are dressing in those situations. And if you get somewhere, you put your suit on and you walk in and everybody's in shorts and t-shirts, don't panic. It's okay to be overdressed. You don't want to be underdressed and sitting there and trying to build up. They can always pull you back, right? So bring your best. So if you do have that suit, that's okay. To let them know that you call me back for the second. When we have the next interview, you'll dress to fit the profile here that you see in the office. So, and it's okay to smile. You can laugh on that one. That'll be a nice little joke. But just again, dress to impress and bring your strongest moment in your opening. Next slide, please. Open strong. Greet the interview. Right now, we're not shaking hands too much anymore because of COVID. So maybe a fist bump or a nod, a friendly nod, but make eye contact. Look people in the eye. What is that? The eyes are the windows of the soul. So touch, reach out, connect with them. If you're looking in their face and looking at them in the eyes with a smile, you're connecting with them. This is all about communication. So, and you want people to be confident when they meet you that you are bringing your best, right? So smile. Small talk is good starting out. Hey, the weather is crazy. The weather here is, our weather's been, even with the rain, it's actually been pretty nice. We could have 6 inches of snow. If you look at California and now New York is about to get hit with a nor'easter, we could be living there and we could have flood warnings coming across the screen constantly on the TV. So our weather, relatively speaking, is pretty nice. But those are nice little kind of icebreakers to start conversation, or at least to let people know that you're into what's happening now. You're aware of your surroundings, and you're just there to communicate and enjoy that conversation and really find out and get closer to your goals and the employer's goals. Above all, be confident. How do you be confident? Making sure you are prepared. Making sure you are prepared. That starts with doing the resume things you're doing, completing the application, and really doing your research or your due diligence. Do the research before you get there and make sure everything is ready. If you're a quiet person, one quick one. If you're the type that don't like to speak in front of groups or in front of people, one way to help with that, I think Rosie may have mentioned about reading a book. If you take a few minutes each day, start out with 5 minutes. Grab a book, a newspaper, a magazine, the funny papers. Take a moment, get into a quiet space and read out loud to yourself. Just read it out loud, not screaming, but just in a natural voice, but out loud so you can hear yourself. Once you start getting more comfortable hearing yourself communicate, you'll feel better about communicating in an open area to people, right? So don't be afraid of that person you're interviewing. They're just people. So take your time, breathe. When you start getting nervous on certain questions, take a moment, take a breath, and then maybe you need to repeat the question back. But all of that will help build your confidence as you are meeting people. And again, take some time to read out loud if you're really not that confident in terms of speaking in front of people. Next slide, please. Body language. And this says mistakes that can cost you the job. There's so many. This is just a sample here. Failing to make eye contact, failing to smile, playing with something on the table. There's nothing worse than sitting at someone's desk and you want to reach over and grab a picture on their desk, or you want to grab their stapler or grab a folder. You may get thrown out, but and that's happened to me where people sit down and reach over and grab something. Hey, I like that. What is that? Well, wait a minute. You don't, we're just meeting. You have to give people their space, right? So bad posture. You don't want to slump in your chair. And this is even in a virtual interview. You don't want to do a virtual interview on your camera and you're sitting like you're sitting in your posture is as if you're sitting in an easy boy lounger. Your feet are kicked up, you're laid back, big pillow behind your head. You don't want that. You want to show some type of energy and enthusiasm that says, yes, I want the job. Be careful crossing your arms over your chest. Sometimes that comes off as a negative, like you really don't have time for people, right? Playing with your hair, touching your face. Again, that handshake, not really doing that too much these days due to COVID. Try not to use too many big hand gestures. Who was that? Buttigieg in the elections, during the presidential elections, they talked more about him moving his hands than actually what he was saying, because his hands were all over the place. Every time he said something, his hands were gone. So that's more of a distraction while you're trying to talk and get your points across. But if you got to do this every time you say a word, I got to say what I'm saying, before you know it, they're not even listening to you. They have tuned out. They'll let you continue talking, but they have tuned out and moved on and are thinking about their next appointment. So try not to do that. Speaking of body language and posture, next slide, Dan. Which of these people would you hire? Maybe just a quick chat, if you can throw your hand up, or by a show of hands. Which one? The one on the left, the gentleman sitting there slumping in his chair, or the person on the right? Which one looks focused, looking in the eye, bright smile, energetic? Which one would you hire? And it goes beyond color. It goes beyond a whole lot of things. But right now, just looking at this A and B here, there's one on the left, one on the right. Which one would you hire? And that is the kind of energy and positivity you want to bring to your interview, because you're going to meet with a lot of people. You might go through 6 interviews for a particular job, but you want to make sure that each time you bring in your best step, right? Thank you all for answering that. And the majority of you did pick the person on the right. So good eye. Next slide, Dan. Communication and interview questions, right? Questions. Yeah, and again, body posture. Are you be confident about your showcasing your abilities? You know, Ms. Carter mentioned about your resume. One thing, you have to be familiar with your resume. Even if someone else writes it for you, you're applying to different positions. You have to be, you must be, you gotta be familiar with your resume. Read through it. Know why things are written on there. Know why Ms. Carter put something on your resume in a certain way. It's your job, is what you did. It may not be exactly the way you said it on your previous resume, but read through it, be familiar with it, be confident in it. That resume tells your story. So you have to be able to deliver your story when you are talking to people, right? Build rapport with your interviewer. Again, communication, smile, eye contact, good posture. It says mirroring, the mirroring method. So you see they're both sitting there on the left, both legs crossed. Our wonderful ex-president, but that's another story. So you are basically mirroring the person you're talking to, right? You're kind of reflecting back just what they're giving you in terms of their body posture. So all of this, what helps your communication? That's not a question on there, but what helps your communication is your preparation before you get there. Prepare yourself. So make sure that you are doing all of the due diligence you can to bring your best foot forward. And how do you stand out from the crowd, or how do you build your confidence level? It's preparation. You don't go to the game and decide at the game that now you want to practice free throws. That's Ben Simmons. You don't want to get to the game and decide you want to practice free throws. So you want to do that on your time. And that's all about building up your base of skills. So you want to make sure you're doing that. Next slide. Questions, common questions. Tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you, right? Tell me about yourself is going to get asked in every interview you go to. It doesn't matter where it is, whether it's manufacturing, healthcare, financial, they're going to say, well, tell me about yourself, right? So find a way you can present your information. Learn about who you are. Reading your resume will help you out because it'll tell you where you've been. It will remind you of where you've been, right? You know where you've been, so now where is it you're trying to get to? Why should we hire you? These are all questions that are going to come up. So prepare yourself and how you're going to answer those. Next slide. I'm sorry, Dan. Next slide. How do you answer that? Tell me about yourself. Describe a little about your background. It says 3 unique skills you possess and what you can do for the company. When you have that interview, they want to know how. Let's break it down to the base, right? They want to know how you're going to help them make money. Bottom line, they're not going to hire you. Won't be hired if that employer feels like you're going to cost them money, or have them waste money, which is costing them money. They feel like we train you, but goodness gracious, okay, we got to find someone else. They don't want to hire you for that. They called you into the interview because they thought you would be a person they want to, you are a person they want to contact and potentially can be someone they hire. So make that a part of your give you confidence before you get there. They only called you in because they want to give you a chance, not because they want to bring you in just to kind of break you down and tell you, okay, no, we don't want you, get out of here. That's not why they bring you in on an interview. So again, get all the negatives out before you get there, and then you are able to tell your story, tell you a little bit about your background. Okay, leave out personal information. They don't want to know about you, your different hobbies and whatnot. That'll come up at another time. If you get to the second interview or third interview, it may come up then. You can discuss your education, whether you have a degree or not. Are you taking the time, as Ms. Carter mentioned, are you taking the time for personal development? You've been off for a while. Were you just sitting at home watching TV, watching the soaps? Do they still have soaps? Are you watching all the different shows that come on, right? That really tell nothing or don't educate you. Take some time to maybe look at TED Talks or read different books and whatnot that can help build your knowledge base about the career you are pursuing. If you're into admin and you have access to a computer, take that time to learn different software platforms. If you're not that good in Microsoft Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, take time to work with that. If you're looking at wanting to work from home or do some type of call center type job, they're going to ask you to do a typing test. If you only type 10 words a minute, that means you need to practice while you're sitting at home. Practice on that computer and learn how to type. Build up your typing speed. There's plenty free programs available where you can do that. If you don't have one, look into ENES or under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. There are 90 plus agencies. Many of them have resource rooms where you can maybe give them a call, let them know, listen, I've got an interview coming up. Is it possible I could maybe get an hour on your computer to practice a bit, right? So there's options for you. There's many options through, again, I'm gonna say it again, through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, which is free. It's everything we do under that program is free. Make sure that you are utilizing that to help build your base and prepare you to go into these interviews. In that portfolio, I mentioned a portfolio earlier, right? You want to have your resume, a copy of the job description that you applied for. You want to have all of any certificates or awards that you've received that show how any of your success. They congratulated you for this. You were awarded for that. All of that should be there. You may not need it, but there's an old repairman's thing that don't get to the job and then find out you left tools at home. Take all the tools with you. You may not need it, but it's there, and it'd be terrible if you get to the job and you need that tool and you left it at home. You looked at it and said, I won't need that. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So take all of that with you as you go to these different interviews. And again, just helps to build your base of knowledge and security as you go in. Next question. Different types of, next slide, I'm sorry, Dan. Different types of questions. It's really big now. Big part of interviews today are what they call behavioral questions, right? Behavioral questions. Employers are looking for real life career accomplishments that back up your skills in the form of a story. Behavioral questions, they all come up now. Behavioral questions, what are those? You can't answer a behavioral question with yes or no. Tell me about a time that you had an issue with a coworker and how you worked it out. Well, I've never had an issue with a coworker. Okay. Well, tell me about a time you took some initiative to assist one of your customers. Okay, so now you can't say yes. Yeah, I did that. No, I didn't do that. Okay, now you need to tell a short story. How do you do that? How do you paint that picture? Rosie, Ms. Carter mentioned about painting a picture, which your resume does, but now in the interview, you want to be able to paint a picture with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then wrap it up and be quiet, okay? How do you do that? Next slide, Dan. There's a couple of ways, a couple of methods. You see that? The STAR method. This is how to organize your answers. Situation, task, action, and results. Situation, task, action, results. That is the STAR method. They call it different things. Next slide, Dan. They call it different things. Could also be the CAR method. It's the same thing, just a slightly different phrasing there, different acronym. The challenge, that's the situation, and the task, basically, the action steps and the results. So you want to be able to paint a short picture, a short story, beginning, a middle, and an end when that type of question comes up. Tell me about a time when you showed some initiative to assist one of your customers. Well, I was working at XYZ company, and this is on your resume, so that company is listed somewhere, right? And at that company, I was in this position. Customer needed some assistance finding a particular item in retail, or customer needed assistance repairing something. Someone called, I assisted them over the phone. So those are situations and the task, right? And what was your action? Well, I had to do some research to figure out how to answer this particular question. I had to go look through the storeroom to find different items here to help someone out. And once I found it, I brought it out, sized it up, everything seemed to work fine, and the customer was very happy. They found the gift, or they found the particular item they were looking for. That's the positive result. Once you finish your story, put a bow in it and wait for the next question. One thing about the STAR method or the CAR method, it will help you stay focused on what it is that you're describing. That short story, you can keep that in your mind. It'll help you stay focused so you're not drifting off into 10 different directions to try to get your story across. And before you know it, when that happens, you've been talking for 20 minutes and they've let you talk for 20 minutes to get to your next question. And believe me, by that time, they've probably kind of drifted on you. So you want to make sure of how you focus those things. Next slide, a little bit more about behavioral questions. They'll ask you, tell me how you effectively work under pressure. See, one thing they're trying to find out about you, this talks about what they're trying to find out, how you handle stress. Wants to know how you're going to work under pressure. That next question, how do you handle a challenge? Focuses on how you resolve situations when you respond. So what is your process for handling stressful situations or challenges? That's what they're asking you. But another thing they're asking you is how well you communicate, right? They want to know, next slide, Dan. They want to know how well you communicate, how well you get your points across. They may ask you, have you ever made a mistake? Everybody alive has made a mistake on the job. Okay, everybody has made some kind of mistake on the job. I don't know of any perfect people. And there's probably some A students, or what do you call it, type A personalities out there to say they've never made a mistake and they made mistakes. So it's okay to make a mistake, but what did you learn from it? How did you handle that? And that's what they're asking you when they ask you that kind of question. Yes, I made a mistake. It happened over here, it happened there. But in the result, whether it's the STAR method or the CAR method, the result is you learn from that. You grew from making that mistake, right? So it's okay to make a mistake, but don't keep repeating the same mistake over and over and over and over and over. You grow, you learn, and you continue moving forward. So that's a way to deal with that kind of question. Okay, give an example of a goal you reached and tell me how you achieved it. Again, they want to hear a short story. How do you present your information. How do you get from point A to point Z? Are you hitting A, B, C, D all the way out? Or are you hitting A, F, B, G, X, C? You're going back and forth. You want to make sure you're focused and flowing with your answers, and that you practice that. Take some of these questions, work with someone close with you, have them maybe record your conversation, your interview when you do your mock interviews. Now you can see how you presented that information for particular questions. So you can stay focused, stay on point as you're answering. Next slide. 5 tips for answering interview questions. Watch your timing. Keep your energy level high. Avoid monotones. What's a monotone? That's when everything comes out the same way. All of your conversation, everything just blah, 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 right? So have some energy about yourself. Don't say anything negative. Never, ever, ever, ever say anything negative about past employers, about past co-workers. Things happen on the job, but you don't necessarily put someone else down to beef yourself up, to bring yourself up in terms of handling a situation. You don't want to do that. And that comes across terribly in an interview. So make sure you don't do that. And remember, the conversation is two-way, right? They talk, you talk. It's a back and forth. It's a call response kind of thing. So make sure you continue that or have that kind of mindset. It's okay if you didn't quite hear the question and you need it repeated. It's okay to ask that. Or also, if all of a sudden you are asked the question and you get nervous, all of a sudden your heart's racing, you feel that sweat roll down the back of your neck real slow, it's okay to take a moment, take a breath. That's a good time maybe to say, you know what, can you please repeat that for me? Because I think I just want to make sure I understand what you asked me. I think I missed something there. So please repeat that, especially if it's, as it says, a 2 or 3 part question. It's okay to repeat, ask them to repeat it. They may rephrase it in a way that makes it a little clearer for you, but that's okay. And again, it's okay to be nervous. So, but just control the nerves, and breathing will do that for you so that you can, again, get on top of the situation. Next question. Next slide, I'm sorry. Don't be impulsive. Listen carefully. This is what active listening. Make sure you are listening to what people are saying. Don't be so quick to answer that you miss half the question, right? What skills do you have? I can do this, I can do that, and I can do that. No. What skills do you have to deal with upset customers, right? Don't be so quick to jump in to answer a question before you hear all of it. Make sure you're hearing the whole question before you decide to answer, right? You're working in a call center. How many outbound calls were you making? I make 300 calls a day, every day, blah, blah, blah. Okay. How many outbound calls were you making that ended with a positive result? Oh, okay, well, let me back up, see? So give people a chance to talk. I know you're excited. I know you're going to be nervous. That's okay, but you have to control that space, those nerves. How does that happen? You breathe, take a deep breath, relax. You feel your heart slow down when you do that, right? Take that moment, listen to the whole question. Now you can respond either using the CAR method or the STAR method to help respond to those particular questions. So it's okay to take a moment, right? Next slide. Closing the interview. Closing the interview, right? So what is closing the interview? You come to a point where they have asked you all kinds of questions. And now, which happens in every interview, whether it's manufacturing setting, a warehouse setting, driver, finance, it doesn't matter. They're going to ask you, do you have any questions for me? It's going to happen. Make sure you have some questions, right? And by doing your research prior to going to the interview, you will have some questions. And think about in terms of asking those questions. Next slide, I'm sorry, next slide, Dan. How did this position become available? What is it like? What's a typical day like for the person in this position? Start to finish. Can you explain that for me? Right? What size of the team are you working with? How do you measure success? Okay, what can I do to exceed your expectations? You know, where basically, how will you be evaluated? What will, in 5 years, if I get this job today or tomorrow after our next interview, you're awarded the job, in 5 years, what would it sound like, or what would I have achieved for you to say, you know what, 5 years ago today, we hired Kenneth, and it's been I wish we could hire 10 more that work like he does, right? So what would that mean to you as an evaluator? So those are the kind of questions you want to ask. You definitely don't want to ask how much I get paid. How soon do I get my check? What are the benefits? When can I take time off, right? How long is the lunch break? You know, those aren't the kind of questions you want to ask right up front. Those things will come up. If you get to the next interview, at some point, they will let you know all of that information. So give them a chance. Don't be in such a rush, but just take your time, ask the particular questions that can help you move the process along and show that you are really concerned. And also it shows that you've done your homework and your due diligence before you got there. So make sure you're asking those questions, right? Next slide. How do you close? We're still on closing, correct? You want to make sure you get a business card from everyone, or if it's virtual, make sure you get people's names, phone numbers, email address, right? Write that information down so you can send them a thank you. We're going to talk about next steps in just a moment. So make sure you get that type of information so you can send a thank you letter, right? Unless you have more questions, ask more questions. But if you've reached all your questions, everything is clear, thank you for your time. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to meet with me and meet with you and talk to you about this position. And oh, by the way, yes, I do want the job, right? And I'm very anxious to hear from you in terms of the next step in the process. If you have any questions, was that last line say? If you have any follow-up questions, please call me or email me. Don't hesitate. Just give me a call. Next slide, Dan. Right? Follow up or next steps. The next steps. What are the next steps? I maybe if you all have ever attended one of the little job club things we do, we talk about next steps. What are next steps? A thank you letter, whether it's snail mail and you put a stamp on it, or you send an email. Thank you. Thank you goes so far. I appreciate you taking the time out to meet with me. Don't assume, as it says, don't assume you got the job, right? But send a thank you letter. I get calls from people and I think they feel maybe a little guilty or something. Something in the back of their mind was saying, wow, I should have wrote a thank you letter. It'll be 2 weeks after the interview. And they'll call, Ken, have you heard from them? I had my interview 2 weeks ago. Okay. I haven't heard. Did you send a thank you letter? Oh, no, I didn't. Think I should have sent one. I was wondering about that. Okay. You thought about it, but you didn't do it. So send, and this is something we talked about prior to them going to the interview. We talked about that thank you letter and what the next steps are, but now they all of a sudden, now they can't recall. They don't remember, oh, that's right, you said I should, yeah, write your thank you letter. Only takes a moment. It doesn't have to be a long novel, but you're showing people that you appreciate the opportunity to meet with them and to talk with them, and just them taking time out. They could have been anywhere else in the world, but they gave you time to talk to them. So please thank them for that. Next slide. Thank you tips. Jot down key topics or interactions immediately. Once you leave the interview, get back in your car, you're waiting on the bus stop, you're on the train, wherever, in your Uber or Lyft, write down some notes about, while it's fresh in your mind, write down a few notes about the interview, right? I met with Ken, everything was cool. He did ask about this. I didn't quite have the answer I wanted to give. I thought about some other things. Wow, I should have mentioned that. Write those notes, right? As you on your way out of there, when you have a quick moment, write it. Don't wait 2 days to try to go back and recapture that information. Write it while it's fresh in your mind. And now you can go back and you can pick up all that information, right? And that's something you can put in your thank you letter about but make sure you write those notes, and that's something you can put in your email, right? They don't send snail mail too much. My mail gets here 4 days later than it's supposed to. Usually my neighbor brings it, so you may not want to send that these days. But anyway, make sure you send a nice thank you to whoever you meet with, and make sure that you let them know you appreciate it. Also mention that you want the job. Got you, Dan. And actually, we are wrapping things up. I was trying to leave a little bit for questions. If you have them, please put them in the chat. We can talk about it. But follow us, stay up updated with ENES, Employment and Employer Services. We're on Facebook, tweet, LinkedIn, Indeed. Please follow us and forward me your resume if you're interested in receiving or hearing more about the WIO, or the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, those services provided. So that wraps up this interview workshop today. And if you have any questions, please ask. Dan?
Excellent. Thank you so much for that informational presentation, Ken. And again, just like with Rosie's session, if you have any questions for Ken, anything that is related again to that interview process, feel free to throw any questions that you have into the chat for Ken. We do have a few minutes left here for questions, so please don't hesitate to ask. Ken, we did receive a question in the chat already. This individual asked, one thing that jobs usually ask for, not just in the interview process, but also in the general application process, is how you align with the company's mission, statement, or values. How might you suggest answering this during an interview? Any tips for those folks, Ken?
How do you align with the company's mission? You know, that comes a lot in, again, when you do your research, thinking about that mission statement says maybe things about how they cater to their clients or their customers. They get the job done. They believe in getting things done, taking the initiative to do things and to complete jobs. They're not necessarily waiting for, they don't want people to always wait for someone to tell them what to do. They want you to step forward and present yourself and say, okay, I see this needs to be done. It does fall under what I'm supposed to do, but why should I wait to do it? So be sure that you're stepping in to handle that kind of information or those kind of questions. So they're looking for you to take some type of initiative to move forward. Hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, I believe so.
Question,
Ken.
I do see that these, I'm sorry, these sessions been recorded. Is it possible that we can have access to that recording for further review? Because I like the way you guys are details and subtopic, your details, and you can't write everything down. So is there a way we can get the recording also for these videos?
Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just kind of a little side note, we record all the sessions that we hold. So within 48 hours, I will upload the recording of this session to the Illinois WorkNet YouTube channel under the virtual job fairs playlist. So all you'll need to do, get on YouTube, enter into the search bar, Illinois WorkNet, that'll take you to our page. And then again, off to the left-hand side, I do believe there'll be all the playlists that we manage or operate. You'll want to look for the virtual job fairs playlist, and these videos will come up by order of date. So again, these two videos for today's session and tomorrow should be the first ones that you'll see.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Yep, no problem, Will. Any other questions for
Any
Ken?
other questions?
We have hit the noon hour here. So again, want to kind of begin our wrap up of today's session. But if you do have any last minute questions for Ken, while we're still in the session here, feel free to enter those into the chat. And if there's something that comes up afterwards, don't fret. You'll see Ken's email is also on the slide on the screen now too. So you can also send him a message. I'm sure he would not mind. Is that correct, Ken?
Absolutely. Feel free to send me an email. That's my office number there. Call or send me an email with your question. Again, if you are interested in finding out more about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the WIOA program, send that as well. And I'll definitely send you back some information on how to register, eligibility requirements. As a matter of fact, we have a short video, or you can attend one of our workshops on joining the WIOA program, the WIOA program.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. We did get one question here in the chat. Going back to dress requirements, if you will, this individual asks, if I'm going for a truck driving job, should I still wear a suit? What would you suggest for that individual, Ken?
If I don't think it would be necessary to wear necessarily a suit and tie for a driver. If you're just going as a driver, that wouldn't be necessary. Now, if you're going in to be a manager in that situation, you might want to wear a suit, right? But if you're going in to drive, that business casual look would work. You may not even need the tie, but at least be professional in that sense. Nice shirt, pair of slacks. You can even wear your boots. Drivers, a lot of them are wearing boots. So you can wear your boots, but don't wear your boots after you walk through mud for the last 3 days and the mud is caked all up on them. At least clean them up. Like I say, be clean and presentable when you get there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Ken. And again, you'll see here in the chat, I did put a link to register for tomorrow's session. Again, if you've only registered for today's session, we encourage you to register for tomorrow's as well. You may not be able to join the session unless you register for tomorrow's as well. So again, I do believe I have that page up here. So give me one moment. When you put that link in the chat that I have placed there, there should be a page that's familiar to you if you registered for this session. Again, you'll go over here to select a date. Click on that. And the only available session that you can now register for, since this one obviously is now over, is tomorrow's. Again, that's going to be where you're going to have a chance to meet with the employers that we've lined up for this event. So please, 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 if you have not registered yet, be sure to do so before 10 a.m. tomorrow. Somebody asked a question about the employers that are going to be on the line. I'll scroll down here so you can see this as well. So on the line, we're going to have Metra, Chicago Lighthouse, Purpose Workforce Solutions, Addis Home Care, Lawrence Hall, Alverno Laboratories, Chase Bank, Walgreens, The Bazaar Incorporated, and Misericordia Home. So those are going to be the employers that we'll have on the line tomorrow for you to meet with. Again, please be sure to register, prior to that 10 a.m. session. Again, just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Obviously, big, huge thank out to the folks at ENES, both Rosie and Ken, for setting aside time with us today to present all this wonderful information. Again, want to reiterate, the session has been recorded. I will be uploading it to the Illinois WorkNet YouTube channel. So if there's anything you want to refresher on prior to, revamping those resumes, prior to landing that interview and just wanting to, have general preparedness, take a look at those videos and again, refresh yourself. Jeff, I don't know if there's anything that you want to say before we close out the session here today.
I just want to thank everyone for their time, and I hope that we see you all tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow again at 10 a.m. to meet with our employers. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
And I thank you as well, Dan. I'm sorry. I thank you as well for staying around after Rosie's presentation to spend some time with me as well. So I appreciate your time, you all hanging out and staying and asking questions and listening to my information. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your